it is kind of incredible to have it show here. You know, one of the reasons I thought it always made sense with Paris is, you know, because Paris is a diverse society. It's got a lot of the same kinds of complex racial and ethnic relationships like you see in the U.S. You know, it's like one of the few places that I think is very, very similar in Europe to the U.S. And so it just seemed like a kind of very obvious place for it to land. You know, obviously I'm excited. It's a little like showing in the rotunda is a little like the Super Bowl halftime performance. It's one shot. I try to make work that's complex, you know, that you can't reduce to a yes or a no, or either or kind of answer. So, I mean, obviously love is the message is death. I mean, on one hand, the obvious reference to the house music classic, you know, love is the message. But it's also a reference to this science fiction story that had a big impact on me when I was young about James Tiptree called Love is the Plan is Death. So the title itself is like a play on those two things, but specifically it's about trying to figure out how to render, in a sense, the complex relationship that Black Americans have to being Americans, because we are Americans. And it is I mean, I could have even said love is the message is hate. I could have said that as well, you know. It's a complicated relationship that can't be reduced to you love it, you hate it. And so the piece, you know, like people have said, oh, I felt, especially Black Americans have said, oh, I felt so great when I saw it. It made me feel good. But then the next person said it made me feel bad. So it's like, I think the thing about the Black experience, the Afro-American experience is like, it is this sort of complex ball of things that are both magnificent and miserable that can be disentangled, you know? You can't make it one or the other, it's all the same. I certainly think it's political, but I think all works are political. Like, I don't really feel like it's a protest work at all. I think it's protesting anything. I mean, like I said, at best, what it's trying to do is render something of the complexity of what it means to be a Black American and our relationship to not just America, but the West, Europe, our relationship to all these things. You know, I've said this 1,000 times, and no contemporary art practice that can be separated from the advent of African sculptures and artifacts in Europe. And then maybe 20 years later, which sounds like a long time, but 20 years, it's a little bit of time later, and then you start to get Black American music starts to become this global phenomenon, and that also had an impact on Western art practice. So I'm very preoccupied with, given my peculiar and particular and kind of specific relationship to Western art practice, what kinds of insights or advantages might be possible. You know, my relationship to, you know, performativity and improvisation and, you know, expressivity, all these kinds of things. I think when a Black person, a person of African descent, enters into these general questions in modernism, you know, your vantage is always slightly different because you're both inside of it and outside of it at the same time. Black music was the dominant cultural form of the 20th century. I think it's kind of undeniable that it was, you know. Outside of maybe cinema is about the only thing you kind of argue with, but I think if you look at the reach of Black music, like, you know, it's not just Black folks who like Black music, that's the thing. Like, Black music is a product of the West. If you look at traditional African music, which is incredibly diverse, you can't reduce it to one thing, and you say Black music, it's incredible how everybody understands that Black music grew out of or evolved from traditional African musics, right? But at the same time, I could mention 2,000 things that don't sound like anything you ever heard in traditional African music. And so, like, the question of trying to deeply understand Black music is just another form of trying to deeply understand Blackness, you know? Because it is the sort of, not the only, but certainly the kind of most prominent or preeminent sort of expression of Black people's existential experiences in the West, you know? So to me, so much, but it's like really interesting thinking about how a complex understanding of Black music leads you to all these kind of complex understandings of contemporary art practice, Black being, and I mean that in both the political and existential sense of Black being, you know. So at the end of the day, it's just a version of the oldest adage, you all know yourself, you know. So I'm trying to know myself. Like sometimes people have said to me, oh, you're trying to make work about Black people. I say, I very seldom are trying to make work about Black people. I'm trying to make work like Black people. Sometimes I can have a slightly ambivalent relationship about music in my work because it feels like, you know, the music is so powerful. It's almost like you could just put the music over anything and it would be interesting, like literally. Like I almost feel like the music, by putting the music alongside visual stuff, it's like a weird kind of way of the authenticity. I hate to use that word authenticity, but the power and the sort of depth of what's happening in the visual thing is marked by how that music is tracked alongside it. You know what I mean? Like with, say, A Kingdom Cometh As, which obviously is shown here as well. I mean, I made that just because at a certain point early on, I was like, oh, you think this art stuff is doing something? Let me show you what doing something really looks like. It looks like Leandra Johnson or Al Green or something like that. Like, those are my metrics. I mean, I love, you know, Bruce Nauman and Duchamp. There's so many artists I love, but like at the end of the day, do I love them the way I love Al Green? No, not really. And at the end of the day, I look at my work, and if I'm honest with myself, I say, is my work actually doing this? And, you know, 99 out of 100 times, it's not. It's just not. But it's what I aspire to. Well, one of the perennial questions for Black beings or Black folks in the world in contemporary society is like, sometimes I say, people, African people who were enslaved and ended up in the West, we've always had a very complicated relationship to the body-soul split. Like, we, classically speaking, we aren't the subject and we aren't an object. We're somewhere fluctuating between. And being made to exist in that space of the in-betweenness of being a subject, meaning with volition and self-determinacy and thought, and an object which supposedly has no volition, no self-determinacy. You know, we approach things in a very specific way. We understand things in a very specific kind of way. The body, soul, the body thing, you know, that is it. You can't get much more specific around what specific forces led to the very unique kind of approach and understanding in the way Black people occupy the world.